Hi there, this is Pastor Rory from Jakarta, Indonesia, and I'm going to share with you the truth about total depravity in 2 minutes. So we're going to call this Total Depravity in 2 minutes. Now, the first point about total depravity is that it's this. It means that the human condition, after the fall of Adam, he's born into a state of spiritual blindness, spiritual deadness, and spiritual sleep. So in other words, somebody doesn't come into this world neutral, they come in depraved. They come into this world spiritually asleep, spiritually dead. They're dead to God, they're alive to sin. And in fact, they have to be awakened from that state or they cannot possibly be saved. They cannot possibly become a child of God. So you're born into a condition where you're asleep. I've often used the illustration of somebody asleep in a house on fire in a dead sleep. And I have a little brother who we used to share a room when we were kids. And there would be times where I would try to wake him up from a deep slumber, and I would have to shake him literally for 2 or 3 minutes before he would even begin to come around. He was such a deep sleeper. So imagine this person asleep in that house. The fire's burning closer and closer. They're going to die. They're going to burn up in the flames. And now, in this illustration, only Jesus can wake this person up. And it's the same in our lives. It's the same in everybody's lives. If the Spirit of God doesn't do a work and waken somebody out of their spiritual sleep, they will slumber on until the final judgment and they will be doomed. And you know, that's the state people are in. They're spiritually asleep. They're dead. They may be religious, but they don't understand the things of God. They don't understand the reality of heaven and hell. They're asleep. They may think they can appease God with their good behavior or going to church or whatever, but they don't really have a consciousness of how dangerous their situation really is. They're totally asleep. They're dead in their sin, and they're a rebel against God. So, but the first point is they're in a spiritual sleep. They're spiritually dead in their sins and trespasses, and they're blinded. They can't see. You know, the Bible says the God of this world has blinded the eyes of the unbelievers. They cannot see it. They cannot see the state that they're in. They're asleep, and they're in great danger. So, the next point of total depravity is this. The term itself is very terrifying, total depravity. But I want to bring a little bit of a balance here. Total depravity doesn't mean that somebody is as wicked as they possibly could be. In other words, it doesn't mean that they've reached the full spectrum of evil and that they're just absolutely, utterly depraved with no amount of good within them whatsoever. That's not what it means. What it does mean is that even their best behavior, their highest thoughts, most noble thoughts, and their best acts are corrupted. So it means that they're on the road of wickedness. Now we know from what we can observe in modern history in particular, that society can be at a certain level and go down. And we know that individuals can start at a certain place and go down. But what we need to understand is no matter how good the society ever was, it was still evil. And no matter how good the individual ever is, they're still evil. It's just a progression of going from one state of evil to a greater state of depravity. But they're already depraved from their mother's womb. They come into this world in a state of depravity. So what it means is every part of their mind, their soul, their thoughts, their motivations, every part of their being is tainted by sin. Now we know that some people are terribly wicked, like terrorists. They'll go out and they'll just kill people and they'll try to kill as many as they can. Now that's their state of depravity. They've reached about as far as you can get as far as murder is concerned. They just want to murder the whole world. But there's another state of depravity that in our eyes it doesn't look as bad, but it's still depravity. That's where you just hate somebody or you just hold a grudge against them. Now when God sees this, He sees both as depraved. And that brings the next point. The total depravity is a scary thing because it means that everyone is under God's judgment already. They don't have to do worse things. They don't have to be the worst person. They're already fallen. They're already broken. They're already on that path to destruction. Now, we understand that the devil and his angels will eventually end up in the lake of fire. The Bible says that God created a place for the devil and his angels because why? They're completely depraved. They're totally wicked. But here's what we need to understand. The human condition in its state of rebellion against God is equal to that of the devil. And that's what most people never would consider. They think, no, well, I'm much better, I'm good, etc. No, in God's eyes, you are equal. Your depravity is equal to that of the devil. That's why humans will end up in the lake of fire if they don't get awakened and saved by Jesus Christ, because their condition of rebellion is equal to that of Satan. That's really terrible. But here, let me give an illustration of that and how we can see that in everyday life. Now, if there's a central government that has a province or a state that's in revolt, that province or that state that's in revolt and rebellion against the central government, they could be very good to each other. Mothers are good to their children, husbands are good to their wives, but they're in rebellion against the central government. So no matter how good they are to one another, in the eyes of the central government, they're in rebellion and they're going to be crushed. It's the same thing with us in God. You can be good to your brother, your sister, your mother, your father, etc., but you don't obey God, you don't love God, you don't serve God, you don't think about God, you ignore God, you live your life just how you want to live it or just how you think it should be lived, and you don't take God into consideration, you don't seek His will, you don't know His will, you don't even consider it. That's total depravity. It doesn't mean that you're morally bankrupt in every sense of the word. It just means that you're bankrupt enough that you ignore God. You don't pay attention to God. Now, another state is people that don't think they're morally depraved or they're spiritually depraved because they're religious. But here's the thing, religious people are just as wicked, if not more wicked, than those that have no religion. How? Well, look at the Pharisees. The Pharisees were the most severely rebuked by Jesus. They were the most religious people in their society. Well, why? Because they thought of their own selves, of their own flesh, of their own good deeds, they could appease God, they would be good enough, and they just filled themselves with spiritual pride. It was so terrible that there was nothing left for them but judgment unless they repented. And so that's the spiritual flesh that we see. That's the state of everybody that comes into this world. The only way you can be saved is if something dramatic and radical happens that will bring you out of that state. That's total depravity in 2 minutes. Stay tuned for more videos. God bless.